I'll have almonds in my tea. Almonds. Yeah, I have I'm trying to hold over on some almonds. My nuts. Holder.
She might want to scroll around here. I don't want to invade.
Oh no, I'm just gonna get crumbs. That's all I'm worried about. I might have
Okay, where my screws at the desk and stand. Okay.
And I don't know.
How many people do we have in?
Hi, Debbie. Can you hear me? Let me make sure I've got. There we go. Okay, Debbie, I think I fixed it. Can you hear me now? The other thing I don't know is if I'm being seen. Oh, here we go. That's how you know.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. We're just waiting a couple more minutes for hopefully a couple other committee members to show up. So just bear with us a few minutes.
Good.
And I think I have everybody unmuted, but you can unmute yourselves if you just want to check in or let me know you can hear me. Okay, Stacy, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, I can hear you too. Okay, so forgive me. I saw your message in the chat box, but I'm trying to make sure I'm doing all the stuff on my part for everybody to be able to communicate, and I don't always know. You know, I'm not, you know, the specialist in this area. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so we're 4 minutes in, and I was really hoping to have a few more members to vote with us. And I know everybody's really busy, so we could probably get started, I guess. I'm here with Jackie. She's part of our group, and she's actually here with me today. Hi. So you might see her in the background, but I'm going to turn off the video, and we'll just get started. So welcome, and thank you for showing up. I appreciate all of your time and energy you're all putting into this. It's really important to me, and I'm glad that it's not just me. The last meeting, we tabled the no harassment policy, and this meeting, I was pleased that Lisa, Lisa Betchel had sent me some edits that she had I guess she went through our no harassment blanket policy, which is a draft policy, and added some verbiage. So I wanted to share that this morning and get all of your input, take a last look at that. Hopefully we can vote and approve it, and then we'll quickly go through the program standards, and hopefully today will be the day that we can do a vote and get these over to Adriana at the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, who's on the call. And then we will, and then she'll do the work she needs to do to get it formally submitted to her headquarters office for approval. So if everyone can see, and you know, feel free to say something if you can't see the agenda here. This is basically what I just said. Review and revise the no harassment policy, vote on it, and then do a final review of the whole set of standards we've went through in the last several weeks, and then a final committee approval of that. Excuse me. Okay, so I think that's good for that. And we'll just drag over this no harassment policy. Can everybody see this? The no harassment policy. Okay, and these are some of the edits that Lisa, scoot in if you need to, Jackie, that Lisa had, let's see if I can widen this a little bit. Lisa had sent over this morning, so I'm just going to read it out loud. Seems like the easiest way. It is the policy of the educators, advisors, coordinators, and subscribed employers. You know, and what we're missing here is of the committee members. That would be all of you. And subscribed employers of the California Apprenticeship Human Resources Professionals Human Resources Professional. Oh, I see what happened here. Program to fully support the law prohibiting harassment and discrimination. Before I keep going, I just wanted to point out, if you weren't aware, because it came up this morning, this is just a document that needs to go into the program standards. It's not a form of training or a commitment on anybody's part to train in harassment or sexual harassment or anything like that. It's just our blanket policy so that everybody that joins into this program understands that it is their responsibility to ensure that there isn't harassment of apprentices, or that even apprentices aren't harassing any others. So no, I'll just keep going now. So some of the edits that were presented this morning by Lisa, let's see. Adherence to this policy includes treating everyone fairly, regardless of race, color, national origin, ancestry, sex, which includes but is not limited to pregnancy, childbirth, breastfeeding, and medical conditions related to pregnancy, childbirth, or breastfeeding. Sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, transgender status, age, religion, religious creed, physical or mental disability, protected veteran status, medical condition, marital status, genetic information, military and veteran status, citizenship status.
It should say utilization, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Of leaves of absence protected under state or federal law and or any other non-job related factor. I think I took a breath in there. This policy endeavors to maintain a workplace free of any such harassment and discrimination. So I'm guessing this came from some other formal documents. So if there's not anything that anybody sees missing here that stands out to anyone, but I'm glad someone was able to find the right verbiage for us to keep us up to date on policy. Because all I had was an old template. Who knows what decade that was from. Impermissible harassment may take many forms, including but not limited to verbal conduct such as, my goodness, what is this?
Epithets.
Is it epithets?
Yeah.
Now you guys are gonna, are you ready for this? I have to find a synonym for this. There isn't even one.
I think that's the right word. It is the right word. Yeah, it's like snarky. It's like it shows nicknames. It's like when you have like a label for someone.
Right. I learn something new every day. So yeah, labels. So some of the synonyms here make sense. Okay. Mm-hmm. Derogatory comments and slurs, as well as unwanted sexual comments, invitations, and advances. Visual conduct such as leering, derogatory gestures, drawings, cartoons, posters, notes, letters, emails, or electronic media such as texting, instant messaging, and or blogging. I love all of this. Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Physical conduct such as unwelcome touching, assault, blocking normal movement, or interference with work because of sex and or other protected basis. I'm having PTSD right now reading this. Threats or demands to submit sexual requests in order to maintain employment or avoid some other loss, as well as offers of job benefits in return for sexual favors. Retaliation against those who have reported or encouraged the reporting of any such harassment and or discrimination. So what do we, that's supposed to be a space for the gap there. So, okay, we'll just keep going. Any person, whether apprentice, employer, employee, supervisor, trustee, instructor, we don't have any trustees, but that may come later, instructor or otherwise, instructor, I want to say, I want to keep the committee member or otherwise who is found to have engaged in such conduct while participating in the program will be subject to immediate and severe discipline and, when appropriate, will be terminated. And this could say maybe terminated, but would that make more sense to put maybe terminated?
Yeah. And I think severe discipline might be questionable because that implies something. So it would be, will be subject to discipline. I would just, not immediate or severe. I think that's applying some level that maybe we wouldn't intend.
Right, we don't all have authority over, whether someone terminates someone either, so.
Yeah.
So, does that work? Did I cover what you had commented on there?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's better that way.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Any person who feels that he or she is being harassed or discriminated against, or who is aware of any harassment or discrimination, should report it immediately by contacting the program manager or the HR department located at the place of employment. If unresponsive, the apprentice is to report the incident to their chain of command in writing, in person, by phone, or by email. Do we need to consider text messaging here? I don't know. Or do I want to say by phone call?
I would not say text messaging.
Not say, okay.
No, I would not.
Okay. A thorough, objective, and, if appropriate, confidential investigation will be undertaken. If harassment and/or discrimination are found to have occurred, prompt and appropriate remedial action will be taken. No person will be retaliated against for reporting harassment or discrimination or participating in an investigation thereof. Any other comments, suggestions, edits that need to happen? This is really more your area, not mine, so I'm just looking for coverage here that you all would feel good about. It's if it's too much overlap, not enough overlap in what your own policies are, that's okay. You'd have to speak up so we can figure it out.
I think it's good like that.
Yeah. Epithets. Word of the day. For Karina, anyway. The rest of you are probably like, how did she not know this? So if everybody's good with this, what I will do is we'll just do a poll. Jackie's here, so I can vote for her on the poll, I guess. But we can do, well, wait a minute, where's my yes or no stuff? Okay, so in your participant, or it might be in your group chat box, there's a yes or no buttons. So if you want to select those buttons to look at that already, people, I'm going to go ahead and do one for Jackie. Oh, I shouldn't have done that without asking you first.
It's all good. It's all good.
So if you all want to select yes or no, and if you're having any problem with that, let me know. If we can, because there's only 2 votes.
So it's in the chat?
Oh, now I've got 3. I think it's in the chat. Is that right?
I don't see it.
Participants. You click on participants, and it goes there.
Ah.
For me, it just automatically pops up, so I'm not always sure what. And so that's all 4 votes. So if that's the case, then I'm going to go ahead and accept all the changes. Make sure there's nothing left over here. And then what we'll do is we're going to slap this one onto our, this was just for the purpose of getting it out to everybody for your edits, if you had any. And so we'll paste that on this one. Nice. Okay. Now, a couple things are going to change here. Adriana's on the phone, so she can. Adriana, you can feel free to chime in if you feel you need to at any time. But this is what our standards look like. We did a full review on the last call. I'm going to do a quick review on this call, and then. But I do want to point out to you a couple things that are going to change. First and foremost, this Adriana recent practices are at the State Department for apprenticeships is that they're going to convert all this into ADA format. So it's going to look a little different. And then another thing that's going to happen is because of ADA format, these forms will be taken out of the table of comments, and those forms are these employer forms at the end here. Let's see, here we go. So one is the EEO pledge, which is just pledging that you're going to select apprentices according to our regular California requirements, fair and impartial treatment, so on and so forth. And then the next form is the employer subscription agreement form. So employers, members, everybody will still have access to all of this. It just will not be in the actual program standards. It'll just be a separate electronic folder that you keep these forms in that I will be sending to you. All of the forms once they're approved, once the standards are approved, but the forms I can send you at any time. And then the last one is the Apprentice Agreement. And this actually is a two-sided form, so it really doesn't belong here anyway. And we'll actually go through these forms, the actual official forms, which we can actually do on a whole separate call. We can discuss how all the forms are to be completed and all of that on a training call. So that might be more appropriate, since today we want to make sure we make time to do a full review and a vote on the actual standards. So just so you know, in these standards that we're approving today, these 3 attachments, which are the forms, will not be part of our vote because they're not going to actually be in this particular document that will go for approval with the state. The forms do not need to have state approval because they're already state forms. We just made slight adjustments tailored to this program on them. Okay, so any questions so far? Okay.
Nope.
All right. So on the apprenticeship program standards, and everybody sees this, right? I'm not like pretending that I'm talking and nobody.
Yes.
Okay. This is an actual DAS 751 template form, and what that means is that a local education agency sort of administers the program. That's the type of template this is. So different types of programs. There's plant programs, we call them, or firm programs. What those look like are just like a single employer signature program to that single employer. So City of Coalinga is a single employer who has an HR program. So they have an HR, I believe it's HR analyst program, which is sort of what was the catalyst for deciding, maybe we need a statewide program. It does take a lot of time for a program to get approved by the state, and a lot of administrative work behind the scenes that have to happen from the employer's side of things when they're administering a program internally, a signature program. So by doing a statewide multi-employer 751 type of program, a lot of that work ends up on me. And I recently received a grant that's going to help to support that work for employers that want to participate. And then what makes it nice for the employer, it's just those couple of forms, and then they get to, immediately take use of the program or adopt the program into their daily work.
I have a question, Karina. So when they adopt and want this program, now essentially this is the format that they will follow. They cannot change any of the format. They cannot go through and create their own makeup as they go. This would be the format they have to follow, correct?
So they have a couple options. They can obviously create their own signature program, or they could use this program and its format. However, very good question you're asking. I'm going to go back down to the forms, so bear with me, I'm scrolling through everything. What will happen is the employer has some options here. While everybody on this committee, and this committee work will continue too, by the way, but everybody on this committee has already approved, for the most part, like the courses and minimum wage requirements that we discussed, which we'll review in a moment. But there's some things that an employer can do a little differently depending on their practices at their place of employment. Some of that would look like, well, there's what are their wages going to be? So an employer, when they submit their subscription agreement, they're going to give us what are the wages going to be and the periods of wage increases going to be for their program. So in the public sector, some local governments may have in a 2-year program like this, some local governments may have 4 step increases in 2 years, and then some private employers may just go with 1. So so there's a little bit of leeway here for that employer to make some decisions, or to, when they're implementing the apprenticeship, they can determine what those wages need to look like. And by the way, local governments, if you're going to utilize this program, you want to make sure that you include the union rep when you're moving on to this, and you may even want to have a place here for them to sign, just to ensure that they've been properly informed and they understand that they are in agreement with adopting apprentices. But I don't know that that's the case for HR departments, but just in case it is, I just want to throw that in there. So anyway, determining what those wages are going to be and submitting that, and then they can make changes to the work processes, which we'll review in just a few moments. So if their work processes need to look a little different, they're absolutely able to submit their own work process.
As needed then, so they can kind of cater it around their need base.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the hours can be changed on that. So if your HR coordinator is going to spend more hours in a couple of work processes and not so much in, say, a training and development work process, then that can, you're welcome to make all the changes you need to in that form and then submit it here with this subscription agreement. So you would an employer would attach it to the subscription agreement. If their work processes look different, they can list their wages here or submit an attachment wage schedule. And then they can also select what their probationary period is here. What cannot be changed is like the courses. However, that doesn't mean that an employer may not have a need to make a change in a course, or even the college needs to make a change in a course, or if industry, if there was a new course that needed to be developed because of some industry changes in HR.
Right.
So with all of that, those are just committee decisions.
Okay.
So if an employer or a member were to say, hey, we need to add to the agenda, we've got an issue with, say, ABC employer, they've got a need for some additional classes, or maybe they have an apprentice who already took half these classes because maybe that apprentice has a full degree, then we can meet as a committee and then make some determination on which courses can be waived, what courses can be added. We invite the faculty to come to that meeting, talk about what's needed, and then it's always going to be this like evolving process, right? And that's why it's so important, the membership on the committee. And then a new employer may want to request that the committee add them as a representative or a member on this committee. And then what we'll do is, as we meet on a quarterly basis, we can look at the employer subscription agreements and see if we should be adding people. And that's our decision, or I would say all of your decision. I'm just the administrator. All of you are the actual members. And so if there's other things that need to be attached here, other changes, other revisions that need to be made, you can just contact me and we'll figure it out between you, I, and Adriana at the DAS. We'll figure out what other adjustments might be allowed. So a lot of it is in this agreement. And then other things can be made and determined through a committee meeting. And then what we'll do is we'll record any of those changes or adaptions in the committee meeting, the meeting minutes, and then every meeting minutes will now be an attachment to the program standards that were approved. So as we make changes, we don't have to necessarily resubmit a whole new set of standards. We just add meeting minutes so that, you know, the state can look to see, you know, why did you change this or that was in the standards? Well, the meeting minutes are an attachment to the standards now. So as we move forward, the package might grow. And then at some point we can always do a revision if there's enough new information or new changes that had happened over a period of time that we may want to just do a full revision. Okay. All right. So program standards. So first we'll have this table of contents, although this will be removed. But I'm going to play with that after the call today because I'm very anal, and I want to make sure throughout all of the documents that we're not referencing any of this. So I just want to spend a good half an hour really looking through it and making sure it all makes sense. So Article 1, Purpose and Policy, just refers to the Shelley Maloney Apprentice Labor Standards Act, where in the state of California, apprenticeship was introduced and implemented. And then Article 2 is the actual occupation or formal occupational title and ONET code that we're going to be using for this program. This disclaimer is something new that is of interest to building trades construction folks who work under prevailing wages, and just letting them know that this program is not under prevailing wages and is not in construction. Kind of, I think, is supposed to help to get them to, you know, kind of, I want to say be in support of it, but who knows if they still are. Just so they're understanding we're not, walking among their terrain and, going to graduate apprentices that are going to now go to work on a prevailing wage job. We're not doing that. Article 3 is the organization of the committee. So this is a little more detailed here. We're stating to the state that our committee will not be less than 4 members. The membership of the committee represent the employer organizations. So all of you are looking at this program and how it benefits the employer. And then advisors to the program is our apprenticeship consultant, Adriana, an apprenticeship advisor representing the local education agency, and program manager. So this is all the same person, which is me. And then 1 or more members of faculty, because faculty now will be representing apprentices. They're going to be the ones to say, this is what we need to be providing apprentices as students to ensure their success. So they provide the point of view as someone, I guess, if you're looking at it like a labor management program, they'd be bringing a viewpoint of maybe someone from labor who's representing workers, right? So we just have to make sure we're covering someone that's going to be looking out for the apprentice and bringing their voice to the table. Another such advisors that the committee shall determine, such advisors shall act without a vote and shall not serve as officers to the committee. So your members are those of us, or those of you on the call, as you're representing your employer organizations who are offering this program to apprentices and workers. Members are appointed by the committee on first come, first served basis and serve for a 2-year term, which may be extended year to year. An annual election of officers is to be held at each first meeting of every calendar year to promote fair rotation of officers. So, and here I'm thinking this may need to be every other year election. Yeah. An election of officers is to be held at the first meeting of every other calendar year. Is that about right? Am I thinking along?
Yeah, because if they go year to year, they're
Yeah.
going to get in there and make a decision, and then they can't actually see anything through until they're going to be out.
Correct.
By the time it comes done. So yeah.
Yeah.
And one term is really not a good standard.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So if we're meeting, okay, and so just so you all know, when we get approval on this program, I'll be putting out a request to do a meeting, and we'll have our first actual meeting of an approved committee, and then we'll select officers. And so those officers would be a chair, co-chair, and secretary. Unless anybody would like to add something here, it's perfectly fine. We could probably have a treasurer, although at this point there's no, unless later we were to decide that we wanted to have some sort of trust account to provide additional training or whatever other services are needed by apprentices, then I would say in that case, yes, we'd probably want to add a treasurer here. But I'm not certain that we need to do that in this case. It's kind of common in labor management because they do, they do all of their own training. They have their own training centers and they have a full budget and they go after various sources of funds to provide all that training. And so somebody has to kind of be looking after the money, I think, there, or it's representing that side of it. So is everybody okay with chair, co-chair, and secretary? Because this is definitely something we could change.
Yeah, I think I'm good with that.
Okay, perfect. Members shall meet. It's a minimum of quarterly, so we can do more, but we want to try to do our best to meet quarterly. So I'll make sure that I'm staying on top of that and sending out invites and working with all of you to choose dates that work for everyone. A quorum must be present to carry on the regular business of the committee, and a quorum should consist of at least 3 members. And so right now we have a considerable number of members, but we want to have a minimum of 4, but a quorum is 3. Apprentices or others wishing to address the committee would submit a request to the program manager. And then at some point we will be developing as a committee these rules and regs, which will state that in. And we can talk in depth about rules and regs, but for the sake of time, we'll leave that for another meeting. So if someone were to present to me that they want to meet with the committee for some reason, like an apprentice who has some questions or has a problem or anything that anyone has where they want to come before the committee, they'll be submitting a request to me, and then in the process of submitting a request just means I'm going to be able to add it to the agenda. So that would be the reason why a formal request would be submitted. For each employer participating in the program, the DAS will obtain an employer subscription agreement, that form we went over, and it'll be provided to specify the information particular to the employer as noted, including the option to waive or offer participation on the committee. Employer committee members will be selected as outlined in the rules and regs. Okay, just want to make sure I wasn't referencing here the attachment. Try to look through this as I go. The jurisdiction, usually here, it's the counties that are covered, but because this is statewide, I'm not going to list all the counties. I don't need to. This Article 5 is functions. So basically serving as an advisory capacity, sort of management of the program, ensuring that it's a structured program and that, we're making progress and changes as needed. Periodic evaluations, we'll probably do something like that in the rules and regs so that as we're having our meetings, we're looking at the evaluations and making sure that apprentices are successful in their journey. Let's see. Establishing a mechanism to be used for the rotation of each apprentice from work process to work process. This is actually already in the work processes somewhat, so we'll take a closer look at it in future meetings, but it's not like building trades where you're moving from a job site to a job site, and that stuff's got to be really heavily looked at to make sure someone's getting. I mean, one thing I noticed when I oversaw the electricians is when the solar thing blew up, they'd have a 5-year apprentices out on a solar field for 5 years and they got no other experience. So this is the reason why this item is here. For us, it may not be as it might not be the same thing, but we do want to make sure they're moving and getting a variety of work experience in their trade. Aid in the adjustment of apprenticeship disputes, and follow fair and impartial selection procedures. So some of that is the work we'll sort of be overseeing as a committee. And then our responsibilities, and I've gone over this twice now, so if you all feel like you've probably took a look at it a couple of times already, I won't go through all of it. Maybe let me just look to see. We are going to be looking at putting together some rules and regs. We've got plenty of samples that we can do that with at a later date. We may later be talking about how to conduct orientations or workshops, but for the most part, we do an online orientation for students that are taking our classes. So some of that's sort of built in already. What does our evaluation look like? One of our responsibilities here, this is kind of important to note, what we do want to do, and what I do as a program manager when someone signs on to the program, is I want to make sure they're a legitimate business. And there's reason for this, and you all might not even think that it occurs until you've actually, like in my old position, it was, I would have never thought this, but you know, you go to a factory who wanted to do an apprenticeship program, and you walk in the door and you're literally seeing an underground sweatshop. So it's necessary that our responsibility is that I will go out on behalf of the committee as the program manager and ensure that the worksite facilities are meeting a standard that we want to have, right? So we want to have a standard that the people that we bring into the employers that we sponsor into this program are not doing, you know, illegal activities.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it happens. And I can give you other examples too that would almost surprise you, or should surprise you.
Oh,
So just some of the responsibilities here, and you can take a deeper look at this later. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And if you'd like examples, feel free to reach out to me. But it is also our responsibility to say, hey, we think this apprentice is fully qualified journeyman level now, and do we want to go ahead and get their certificate issued to them? So these are some of the decisions we'll be making in our meetings. When employers say, okay, we have these apprentices that we feel have completed their program, we'll take a vote and move those people forward to getting their certificates of completion. So forms is our responsibility. I'll be tracking the forms, tracking apprentices. All of that is part of what my grant funds. So I'll be doing that on behalf of the committee. Disciplinary procedures, if apprentices fail classes, if they quit, if they don't show up for work, you know, is there disciplinary procedures that we need to have as a committee over stuff like that? Or, you know, maybe we want to, where do we decide how much is the employer's, you know, decision on?
Well, that's what I was wondering. So isn't it the responsibility there of the employer to have their own and enforce what they?
Mm-hmm. So every employer has their own disciplinary procedures, and so if you have an employee and they're not following the, you know, their procedures, or your employee handbook, you know, rules and regs, whatever that is, then you're absolutely able to terminate that employee. That's at your discretion. However, what if an employer doesn't? And we've got a student just consistently failing classes, which we're providing for free for apprentices, not working through their work processes, and they've been in the program for 4 years.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. Is there somewhere in the apprentice program that the employer's responsibility has to log and check in and have attendance requirements?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that is part of my duties is requesting that information as we go forward. So there's no form. Is there a form for this though that they have to have? There is a form. And
okay.
I think I may have shared that at one time, and I probably, give me a second. I think in the last meeting I was trying to find it, and I actually found it to share it with another program recently. Who's that at? I promise I'll have it for you guys in the next meeting because,
Yeah, no worries. I was.
Oh,
just
this is
wondering
it.
how
and I may have shared this in the last meeting, and forgive me if I did, but it's good to talk. Nope, this is not it. Actually, this is my spreadsheet of apprentice tracking. So as we get apprentices, I'm tracking them here. And then this is more of their personal information, which you don't need to see. But anyway, I'm tracking their information here and to make sure they're in classes. So if we have someone that's not enrolled in classes, and of course I'm doing the constant communication with each apprentice to make sure that they are enrolled and they're in the class they need to be in. So if there's some problems there, I'm going to be bringing that to the committee so we can make some decisions. Close this. And then I found the other form. So let me, yes, here it is. So this is another form for each apprentice. The employer keeps this additional form in their employee record. These processes that we have in the standards will be listed here. We'll be looking at those in a minute. Not all of these steps may or may not apply. So there may only be 2-step increases, there may be 4.
I see.
And
so there's
so-
a law. There's an actual law.
So
Okay.
employers will have to submit this to me every so often, because and then I've got to also report this back to the state and say, yes, you know, we're not just graduating people
Right. It's
that aren't-
data collecting.
We
yeah,
want to make
that's
sure they're
good.
qualifying for that certificate, for that apprentice completion certificate. It comes with accountability, right? So
Mhm.
previous work experience can be listed here to give them previous credit. So if you have somebody working right now and they're like an assistant in HR and you want to make them apprentice, but they've been there for a year and you want to give them a year's credit, you certainly can do that here. You may need to catch up on their classes, but you can also give a person, look at the other side of this, previous course credit. So if they've already had certain courses, you can get, we as a committee can look at that and go, oh, okay, the employer wants to give the apprentice course credit. Oh, they actually took these courses before. We can certainly give them the course credit. Although they, you know, they'll be doing all of the work hours and then just apply, you know, maybe have less classes to have to take in that 2 years. So this basically is a master training card, which, you know, each employer will be keeping, and then I'll be receiving copies of that. And then at our committee meetings, we may be taking a look at that just to make sure that all of our apprentices are moving through the program efficiently, you know, adequately, and moving their way to
That's a good gauge and to see progress. Okay.
exactly. And so employers will have training. I'll be doing an orientation with employers as they sign up and have a new apprentice. So, you know, they'll get training, and I'll be here constantly to field calls and questions and get everybody, you know, really familiar with the requirements. It shouldn't be a lot of extra work, but there is some. I mean, obviously we don't want to just be running a program without accountability. And then I have to, and then, you know, and the state, you know, comes to me once a year and then once every 5 years and says, show us your records and that you guys know what you're doing. So we have to, you know, be able to present all this. Wonderful. Okay, so anyway, this program for training and education regarding illegal discrimination and sexual harassment, we're gonna employ each employer to ensure that that's there. And I may be asking, you know, just, you know, can you provide me evidence that you do this training? And that might be all that consists of. That we as a committee just want to make sure the employers have some kind of training. And this is the law anyway, and it being an HR program, I can't see why that wouldn't be the case. So it should be pretty easy to meet that standard. And then the DAS also asks me to do a self-assessment review and a program improvement plan each year. And so I may come before the committee and say, how do we, those are already forms, so it's just a matter of us looking at the forms and saying, what do we want to say we're going to do to improve by next year and the year after, and it's just a constant evolving animal training programs are, right? And then just ensuring that we can be sustainable in this. So at some point this grant ends in 3 years, and if there's not another grant to back it up, what are we doing to make sure the program's sustainable? So then make sure we have a manager of all of this, or what is that going to look like? So something we don't need to look at for a couple of years, but at some point we will want to look at that. Definition of an apprentice is 18 years of age. The duties of an apprentice, performing all their work and their learning assignments, being and complying with our rules and regulations. The Apprentice Agreement is one of the forms. So the apprentice signs that they understand that they will need to take courses in order to maintain their employment. They have to pass those courses. And so what's required of that apprentice, it's in the agreement that they'll sign. What do we do about terminations and transfers? That's listed here. We may not have the ability to do transfers, but we just might. We don't know. So if somebody says, I can't hold on to this apprentice, we're having budget cuts, is there another employer in that local area that might be able to transfer that employer, and then they keep their time and their courses with them? But what I like about their courses is that they all fit into a business administration AS degree. So it's not. It kind of gives us a little bit of a what's the word I'm thinking of when when you have acrobats and they have a little net. Safety net. Okay. Is it really that simple? Safety net. Okay.
I think so. Okay.
So anyway, this is a safety net. So if an apprentice isn't able to complete a program because of a termination or something, they can at least be on a pathway to an AS degree.
I have a question. Can they? I'm just thinking of a lady. Let's say she's in the program. She has a baby. Can she take time off and come back in? Is there something set in place that says that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we may have talked about that in the meeting. I know.
Okay. Sorry.
Jackie was in Hawaii.
Oh.
Okay. So we're going to forgive her.
Sorry.
But yes, there's
Okay.
there is the ability to counsel, and I think we went over the form maybe.
Okay.
And I don't know if we did, but we'll do all that again in another meeting. We'll go over forms a few different times.
Okay.
So don't worry. But there's an ability to counsel the apprentice, and then we initiate a new apprentice agreement when they come back. So yes,
there's like place it on hold and freeze it and bring it back.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a lot of little things there that we can be talking about, and those questions will come up a couple other times, and that's fine. And I think over time we'll all be experts at all of this, right? Let's see. And then we've got the probationary period information here, which just means you can terminate during the probationary period for any reason. Let's see. And then this article refers to the attachment we'll get to in a moment. We've got to move a little quicker here because we've got 11 minutes. Layoff, what happens in that case, which we kind of just talked about. There's a cancellation form. What's good to point out here? Termination or term of apprentice and probationary period, all that's in this attachment B. So we'll go through the wages, the work processes, ratio, all of that, which we all voted on previously, but we'll do a final review, just to do a final vote here in a moment. Safety and health, certificate of completion, and this allows us to decrease somebody's apprenticeship by 12.5% if they've kind of fast-tracked their way through. So if somebody's been in the program almost 2 years, but not quite 2 years, and we can actually request a certificate of completion before their time is up, if the employer feels that and the committee agrees that that apprentice has already mastered the skills of the job. So just some areas there I think that might have been worth pointing out. Let's see, and the California Plan for Equal Opportunity, this really refers to the Equal Opportunity Pledge form, which was one of the attachments, but will now come out, but still a form. And it's just kind of, it is a subscribed employer will be responsible for complying with EEO laws, same as any other employee. And so I'm going to sign here. And I think we need Adriana's name will end up going here since Linda has moved on to the Sacramento office for the DAS. And then the attachment A is the listing of all of the committee members and advisors. And this may actually, I think I'm going to add some line items here for our, okay, I just see what I did. I just did local education. So this would include advisors like our faculty, myself. Attachment B. So this is the different types of occupational titles that fall under our main occupation and ONET code that we as a committee decided would would all work for this apprenticeship program. This is the term, so it's 2,000 hours, so equivalent to about 1 year of full-time work would be period 1, and then 2,000 hours would be period 2. So if any employer has something different that they need to propose, it just can't be less than 4,000 hours, but they can certainly add periods if need be. We can figure out a way to put that into the subscription agreement. And there's a minimum of 288, oh, I'm sorry, there is 288 instructional hours in the 4 credit courses that we've tied into the program. The wage schedule, what we decided as a committee that the minimum wage that an employer would pay would be 15 an hour starting, and then their second period must be a minimum of 16. Now, of course, employers can pay more, and we're going to advocate that you do, but we're going to leave it at this minimum wage so that every employer in any region of the state where you might have a lower cost of living can also be can engage the program. Let's see. Just to how to advance. So they have to meet all of these standards to advance to the next level or complete at the end of the second period. It talks about overtime provisions. All of this is just exactly the same as the regular labor code requires. And then the work training. This is the work training we all previously approved, but again, these work processes can be amended and attached to the subscription agreement if an employer has something different they need to submit. That's okay. Which is why I like this type of program, because it's a little flexible for different employers that have different types of work going on. And these were the courses that we as a committee approved. It's not a whole lot to offer at a community college level for business courses related to HR. It is not an HR bachelor's degree, so you don't see a whole lot of those upper level courses here, but it definitely leads to a degree which someone can transfer and to a bachelor's program at a university if they chose to advance their education. And then the ratio is qualified employer may employ up to 2 apprentices when at least 1 journey worker is regularly employed, and 2 additional apprentices for each additional journey worker regularly employed. And the reason for this language was more around construction, because, apprentices were cheaper labor. And so what would happen is a contractor would, go out and get 5 apprentices and 1 journey worker, and really those apprentices weren't being looked after, so it damages the quality of work in construction. And so they put ratios in place, and safety, by the way, but they put ratios in place for that purpose. And so we're just sort of trying to comply with that. So we can really change that around to whatever we need it to be at this point. But I think it's pretty fair to say, I can't see an employer needing, 5 apprentice HR professionals.
Well, unless they own multiple locations.
Well, that's true. But then to have at least 1 journey worker for each,
Yeah.
So I think this looks pretty fair, but if somebody thinks that there's like you just offered a suggestion or an example that may look for something different, then feel free to chime in here. If not, I'll scroll through because we got about 5 minutes. Here's the local education letter. So this is a letter that West Hills is going to sign off to say, yes, we're going to provide these courses tuition free to apprentices. And then here's our no harassment policy that we just edited. And then again, these forms will come off of the actual standards, but they will actually still be the forms that we're going to use. And I'll be sharing those, and we'll be, in fact, I can even share them today in the follow-up email. So you have the actual template forms in Word and Excel. Just so you can take a closer look on your own time, and at some point we'll have a meeting and do some extensive question, Q&A on these if you feel like you need that sooner than later or after the approval. Okay. So does anybody have any questions before we move for a vote? Let me go back to the top.
No.
Any questions? Any chat box questions or? Everybody.
Hi, Karina. It's Adriana. I have a last comment.
Okay.
So the standards will look a bit different once I change them over to the ADA. The committee could still approve all the information that's going to be on it, but the format will just change a bit when I send it over to you.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So Adrienne is going to do a little bit of work that she needs to do on her end and some input, and then she'll forward them to her headquarters office where they'll get posted and approved. There's a time frame for that. So my hope and prayer is we would have our approval maybe before summer classes began. And I know there's some SHRM conferences coming up, local SHRM conferences throughout the state that I'd like to try to make a few of those and actually advertise this program to employers. So we'll hope for the best and see how it goes. So if no other questions or comments on your participant box, you can I clear this somehow? Okay, so clear all. I hope that doesn't clear all my. Nope. Okay, so on the participants box, go ahead and select yes or no if you approve, or for whatever reason do not approve, and then we can discuss if there are any no's, and then if not, I'll record that in the minutes and we will be moving forward. We don't have any other meetings on the calendar, but I can keep you informed by emails, Adriana or I, and then as soon as we have an approval, we'll start scheduling some meetings to continue the work. Cool. You want me to select for you, Jackie? Jackie says yes. And so who's left on the call? So that's 3, and I think I'm just waiting for one more vote.
Sorry.
No worries. Unless somebody's driving, I understand. I can vote for you. Oh, I got all 4 votes. I asked a small committee, but you know, it's all recorded, so hopefully people are catching up. Thank you so much. This is huge. I feel like we're, you know, I was at a statewide meeting yesterday, day before yesterday. I did drive back yesterday, so it seems like the same day. Down in Southern California, and the state California HR office is creating some apprenticeship programs, and they showed the list of the types of programs they were putting together, and none of them were HR. So I felt like, wow, we've got nice. We're doing like this catalyst catalyst work here we've done. So thank you, everybody. You know, you never know, they may be adopting our program and asking to put apprentices in our program. So exciting stuff. All right, have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thanks again, and feel free to email or call me if you have any questions, or just, you know, need to chat about anything at all.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.